All right, welcome back to Every Sport Today. Today, it is a special podcast. I still need to decide whether I'm breaking this up into two parts or just releasing that as one giant episode, but we have hockey. First on the docket here, the NHL. That's right, the NHL's back. We did a preseason preview, right?
We did a preseason preview, and if we're going to revisit anything, it's going to be painful for me.
Yeah, I don't remember how good I did. I had the Predators as a pretty strong feeling of mine. Outside of that, I don't remember what else I felt. But you also talked very highly on the Penguins, so
yeah,
we're one for one
I
on terrible
Penguins,
predictions.
and then we were both kind of like, I feel like Boston really loaded up defensively.
Yep.
And so, yeah, those are the two ones that I'm like, yeah, if we revisit that, I don't
Probably
feel great.
Yeah. We nailed some, we missed some.
Yeah.
That's what happens, man. That's what happens. I feel like I don't even remember. I feel like we were on the Winnipeg train. Winnipeg kind of surprised a lot of people, but I feel like we were semi on the Winnipeg train. Yeah. We were on the Hellebuck is the best goalkeeper in the world train, which led to them succeeding this way.
Yeah, and I feel good about the Hurricanes too. Like, I think I was high on the Hurricanes, where I was like, hey, I just like how this team is running things. And then, I'm sure we'll get more into that. And then I was high on the Oilers, and the Oilers have spent the whole year being like, oh, you think you know me?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
A little edge up in this.
Yeah.
A little metalingus. Anyways, we are here talking about hockey. It is less than 20 games left in the season for most teams. The Sabres are the only team at 62. The Kings also have only played 62. So maximum 20 games left, give or take. Teams are starting to fill out where they're all playing about the same amount of games. Like, I remember for a while the Avs were always 3 games ahead of everyone in the Central, and now the Winnipeg Jets actually have a game up on us.
Right.
So feels like everyone's balancing out. Feels like a good place in the season for us to recap it. And it was the trade deadline this past week. So that's mainly what we're here for, to talk about these main trades and to break it down into what needs to be talked about with what teams going far in the playoffs. Where do you want to start? What was the most surprising trade to you? I feel like I have my pick, but
yeah, I feel like it's not ranting into the Hurricanes, it's ranting into the Stars, where it's like the two trade approach is just, that's cool. I like that happened, and that was fun. And especially I remember I sent you a text when I saw that there were rumors he was going to get traded again from the Hurricanes.
Yeah,
where it's just like, I mean, what a Mikko Rantanen ride it's been.
Yeah, exactly. He's been on 3 different teams now in however long. I think I saw the stat that was he's the first player in history to have 70 points in a season and play for 3 or more teams. And I think the previous record was 55 or something like that.
Right.
It speaks to the caliber of player that Mikko is, and the fact that they were so, I don't know. It feels like every team that traded either for him or traded him away wanted him on their team. Right. And that's to speak on how highly Rantanen is. But at the end of the day, he ends up on the Stars. He ends up on that team. I want you to rank this in order of what team comes out the best in these three. Okay. So basically the Avs get Nietzsche's and Jack Drury from it, but they give up obviously Rantanen, a second and a fourth, I believe. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And then if you're the Hurricanes, you get Logan Stankoven back. Obviously a big deal. That's just a great young player.
I love Stankoven.
Yep. Stankoven he's an incredible player. Well, so you get Stankoven.
He was the scary, wildly, he was the scary one in the playoffs last year when they played the Oilers. He was him and Wyatt Johnson. It was just man, these kids are just brutal. They scare me. That's crazy when Robo is on the same ice. Exactly. And Robo does not scare me in the playoffs.
Yeah, in the playoffs, not as much. In the regular season, yes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But then, so Carolina gets Stankoven back. They get 2 first-round picks and 2 third-round picks. So basically, they give up the third and fourth and Nietzsche and Drury. They get Stankoven 2 firsts, 2 thirds. Then Carolina or Dallas gets Mikko Rantanen, and they pay him $12 million a year. Out of those 3 teams, rank them in order of what you would rather have out of that trade. Like if it was just a 3-team trade, just right then and there, how would you like rank those 3 teams coming out of it?
Well, and this is the thing. There's kind of the NBA effect here where I'm just like, well, who gets the best piece? That's Dallas. And Dallas got him at $12 million, where he was negotiating for $14 million with Colorado. And so
that number's been weird.
Right. And I mean, that's a lot of agent press, I'm sure, because he has the same agent as Draisaitl. And so I'm sure that there was a lot of trying to get that number higher. But even then, 12 million's a more palatable price, and you get him locked in, right? Because Carolina didn't know if he was even going to re-sign with them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I still think Dallas wins the trade, especially because I think that as far as what left and what came in, I think they're really happy with it. And like, that's the thing. I think Carolina has to be the bottom of the trade, but it's just because it's all future stuff for the most part. I mean, Stankoven, you're hoping becomes really good and even better. And then Avs, they definitely win the nostalgia portion of this, but Nietzsche's now gets the McKinnon bump. And so I think Avs fans are thrilled, but I do think that Rantanen's a better player than Nietzsche's. But we'll see. I mean, that's the frustrating part for me trying to rank this when it comes to the Avs is it's like, but you get the McKinnon bump.
Yeah.
And I just really value the McKinnon bump. But then all of a sudden I don't with Rantanen, I guess. But so that's the hard part. And I would like to see how it materializes.
I think this is a trade that we're going to look back on without a doubt in the next 3 years. And Nietzsche might just be washed.
Right.
I mean, he's still relatively young. He's still in his prime. He's not going to be completely washed, but there's a possibility that Mikko is just continuously a top 5 player in the league, a top 5 point scorer. And then Stankoven turns into a cornerstone piece. And then you add on the 2 first-round picks that you get from Dallas on top of it, what that could look like for Carolina.
Right.
There's a world where you look at this trade in 3 years and it's terrible for Colorado.
Right.
It's terrible.
Well,
especially if they don't win a title.
And you can't really say, though, that it'll be terrible because, they were probably going to have to pay the most for Rantanen of these 3 teams. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how it broke down, is if you stay with your team, they've got to pay you the most, right? And so that's the other part of grading the Avalanche portion of this is it's the individual trade itself, I'm not super thrilled with if I'm Colorado, but at the end of the day, with everything that they did off of it, I couldn't grade them higher, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I kept texting you being I'm very frustrated that the Avs keep making really good trades here that allow them more flexibility this year, more opportunity this year, but also increase their flexibility in the long term.
Yeah.
Which, as you and I have talked about, it's that's the thing that the team hasn't had over the last couple of years is any flexibility. And now they've been able to somehow manufacture a better team. It feels like a deeper team.
Yeah. Oh, 100% a deeper team.
Well,
Charlie Coyle's our third line center.
Your depth now, I finally felt like the Oilers had better third and fourth line players. And now I'm I don't really want to see you guys in the playoffs.
Yeah, no shot. Our third line looks pretty dang tough at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a guy like Charlie Coyle coming off the third line as a center who was just an assistant captain for the Bruins, that's just such a key piece. So we'll get to maybe some of the other Colorado trades. It's not that important, I don't feel like. But Coyle and Nelson's probably a bigger deal than Coyle is, but either way.
Nelson's
a good player.
Middlestat was playing well.
Yeah.
So we'll see what Nelson does.
Yeah.
Where it's Charlie Coyle is a big upgrade on the third line.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
just adds way more depth. And now Jack Drury moves down to our fourth line center.
Yeah, and you win the nostalgia portion of the trade as well.
Yeah.
Having a Drury, you got
who
to
wears the exact same
jersey.
number. Yeah. Then again, I was still wearing that jersey.
Yeah.
I love that jersey. Anyways, so we'll move on from that trade. We'll talk about those three teams and what their potential championship hopes look like. But that actually wasn't the trade that I was the most shocked by. I think it had to be Marchand.
Right.
Brad Marchand getting moved to the Florida Panthers. Here's the thing about this trade. When it happened in the moment, I thought, wow, Bruins just giving up, just saying, well,
Phone
we're done.
in.
Nothing we can do. Like it's over. And it's not just over for this year. It's kind of just over. Like we need a new identity.
Right.
That's the craziest part about this trade. And then from the Panther side of it, it's like, all right, when this trade happened, we didn't really know what Tkachuk's timeline looked like. We have a better idea now.
Right.
And now you get, what's his name, who just got suspended? Why can't I think of it? Ekblad.
Oh, Ekblad.
Ekblad just gets banned for 20 games for PEDs.
For 20?
Yeah. He's out for basically the rest of the regular season. And so I'm now looking at this from the Florida side, and I'm like, okay, cool. You guys are going all in to try and repeat, but like you're now down Tkachuk for probably the end of the regular season.
Right.
Maybe more. And now you're down Ekblad for definitely the rest of the regular season. And we'll see what type of player he is when he comes back. Guys who get suspended for PEDs don't come back as well. So I'm kind of looking at this trade in hindsight and being like, this is a lose-lose trade, but obviously in the moment, huge win for the Panthers.
Right.
Do you think this really elevates the Panthers and says, hey, we're a better team? Like, minus the injuries and stuff like that, obviously, like getting a player like Marchand. How much of a big deal is that?
And you've seen the rat line.
Yeah.
They have the ultimate rat line with Bennett, Tkachuk,
100%.
and Marchand.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, that just sounds awful to play against in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. It sounds miserable.
And on top of it, like, Reinhardt's still there. Bobrovsky's still there. Like, and that's not even mentioning, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Their other defender, that Barkov,
yeah,
unbelievable. Like that team is just so loaded. Thank goodness they suspended Ekblad.
Yeah, exactly.
Like because then they can't develop real line chemistry at this point, other than the existing pieces who already have good chemistry. So,
yeah, if they didn't make that Seth Jones trade, they would be in deep shit,
right?
Especially defensively. Like without Seth Jones, it's Forsling, Nate Schmidt.
Well, and that might end up being a bigger trade than Marchand. Seth Jones is a great player.
Yeah.
He's just been buried in Chicago where it's like, this is a borderline unwatchable, right?
Yeah, that trade should have been talked about more.
Right.
Like getting a guy like Seth Jones, who is he's like 100% a first line defender.
100%.
Like arguably one of the top 10 defenders in the league. Getting a guy like him to just fill into a pretty depleted defensive team, especially now, like that's a huge deal for them going forward.
I am a big fan of, in any sport, franchises with good culture, taking good guy from franchise with bad culture is always, you get bumps from that. You get just the like, Seth Jones is like, wait, I get to play with a good team and they only put me in good positions, right? Because that's the other thing. You've been constantly just hamstringed by the fact that your team's horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you get to have fun. You get to only do the things that you're really good at for the most part. Like, I think that's going to be the biggest trade impact is Seth Jones.
Yeah.
But then Brad Marchand just makes you go like, this sucks.
Exactly.
Like, I just don't want to play them.
Yeah, having to play that Bennett Marchand line, just especially in the playoffs, is just going to be miserable.
Right.
It's just nobody's going to enjoy that.
Well, and it's even funnier for me because now Toronto has to either play. They're going to play Tampa Bay in the first round, and let's say they make it out of the first round.
Yeah.
They then have to play Florida.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's zero chance. I don't care how injured. I don't care what the chemistry is. That Toronto team can't keep up with Florida.
Yeah, not even close.
Like, that would just be so brutal for Toronto fans, which I will enjoy. But and even then, I'm hoping Tampa pulls that out. I really like Tampa. That's if we want to get into that. But
yeah, this Tampa team's kind of fun. Real quick, I have to confess something because we talked about Seth Jones. In 2013, I really wanted Seth Jones on the Avalanche.
Right.
And he was the number one prospect for a good while during that year, because I remember being super hyped for that draft, because everyone was talking about how great the draft was.
Right.
Barkov came out of that draft. Jonathan Drouin was in that draft. Like, that draft was stacked. When you look at that, I mean, the top 5 in that draft is McKinnon, Barkov, Drouin, Seth Jones, Elias Lindholm.
Right.
Like, those are just all studs. And so I remember being really high for that draft. And I heard a story about how much Seth Jones loved Colorado and how he grew up in Colorado and stuff. And I was like, yes, I want him on the team.
Right.
Looking back on it, there's no chance in the world I would take him over McKinnon.
So if you take Seth Jones, we rewrite history. You take Seth Jones, and then
we never win a title.
What happens with Cale Makar? Who else was in his draft, and what position did you take Makar?
I don't remember. I think we took Makar 4th, if I remember correctly. Somewhere around there. I don't actually remember.
An Avs fan nightmare of you take Seth Jones and someone other than Makar and McKinnon. It's like,
oh yeah, or even the Rantanen draft pick.
Right.
Like, we had 3 great draft picks, and that's what carried us to a championship.
Right.
So yeah, if we don't absolutely nail those 3 picks, then yeah, where does it leave us? Probably nowhere.
Well, all right. Sad. That's what it leaves you.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially knowing this timeline.
Oh, 100%. What other trades feel relevant? I actually feel like we should talk about some of these like other top tier teams and talk about more of like the subtle moves that they made.
Right.
For example, Winnipeg. Because Winnipeg, I feel like everyone was like, oh, they're going to go all out. They get Tanev and they get Shen. And those are 2 solid pieces.
Solid defenders, big, punishing defenders, so that playoffs that's very, very smart GM work.
Exactly. Yeah. So from the Winnipeg side of things, I think they absolutely nailed the deadline.
Right.
Biggest loser of the deadline. I don't even think it's close. People thought they were going to make a move. Didn't end up doing anything. The Capitals. Capitals are the best team. I mean, they're tied with the Jets on points. They do have a game in hand. So you could say they're the best team in the league, however you feel about them and the Jets. But they made no deals. From what I can tell, I don't think they made a single trade. If they did, it just wasn't major enough.
Yeah, I think they made one, and it was just kind of a like, I don't remember what the actual impact. It wasn't a big deal.
Do you think they should have done more, or do you just like where their team's at?
Well, and that's kind of the funny thing. This is the hard part about the NHL is the playoffs are just such a mixed bag.
Yeah, that's
anyway,
true. Where
it's like, how often do the President's Cup winners actually make it to the Stanley Cup? And it's just
basically
like
never.
It's not that often. And so do I look at the Caps and go, man, like, that's the thing. What deals would I have liked them to make more? Like, what position would I have liked them to upgrade? They've gotten so much out of their guys this year that I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I agree. It just doesn't feel like a team. I don't know. Here's my thing with Washington. Obviously, they're a little bit older, right? Like, they are a well-experienced team. They do still have a good amount of guys. Like, if you look at their roster, they have a good amount of guys who still won a Stanley Cup. What was that, 2019? Like, it's crazy to have that many people still on the team. Obviously, when you have a guy like Ovechkin leading the way, it's kind of hard for me to look at you and be like, yeah, you're a young, improving team, but like, they just keep playing solid together.
Right.
And I feel like that's a recipe for success in the playoffs, except for the fact that they are reliant on Alexander Ovechkin, who is still scoring goals, but he's fairly limited in his role of what he can do, right? So, yeah, Washington's weird to me. I still like their team, though.
Well, and they've gotten so much out of Dubois, who was borderline, like, out of the league. And so that's where it's like, if they're going to make any decisions, they're not going to bring in more vets. And you don't want to bring in youth right now. You want to see how this team does.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm like, yeah, I don't know where I would have gone. I just don't know what I would have liked them to do. And especially with the East, especially with Florida loading up so hard,
True.
I almost kind of like being like, hey, we're going to ride this out a bit. But even then, I don't know. Because I just feel like I am very curious to watch Washington against more of the top teams, because I've kind of like, I watched them a little against like my team, but I can't see clearly when a team's playing my team.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so like I'm curious to see a little bit more against, like, I watched them against Boston, I watched them against Pittsburgh, and they're killing these other teams.
Yeah, of course.
I'm more curious, how do you match up against Toronto? How do you match up against Tampa? How do you match up against Florida? Like, I want to see what that looks like more.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You are a big Connor McDavid fan, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
How do you feel about the other Connor Mick?
I mean, every time I see him, I've been like, hey, these are good Connor minutes.
Yeah. He plays a good Connor Mick role.
Yeah. Like, and you've got, if you're Washington, you're like, hey, we don't have the Connor Mick, but we have a pretty good Connor Mick. I think he's, and for a bit there, he was really bad. So
he was,
for him to kind of turn it around, like that's a credit to good coaching and culture, is that they've been able to make guys like Connor Mick really play better. Him and Dubois, him and man, who's the other guy? Who's his brother's on Stromer? Stromer's played great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Like every time I watch them, I'm like, man. And for years Strome was just criticized to death. So the fact that he's had a big resurgence, I love it.
Yeah. I just wanted your thoughts on the Connor mix.
Yeah.
You know, there's some good Connor mix in hockey right now. Good for them. They're all over the place. What other teams? Let's see. How do you feel about the Oilers? Where are you at? Scale of 1 to 10. We're going to win it all.
I mean, I feel really good, especially if we get the Kings in the first round. We own the Kings,
which you always do.
Yeah. And it's looking like we will again, which will be fun. It'll be really fun, but it's also like really nerve-wracking, because it's like they've probably got to get us eventually, right?
Yeah.
But like, I like our side of the bracket better. I don't want to play you guys. I don't want to play the Stars, and I don't really want to play Winnipeg. So the fact that we could kind of hope that you guys just beat up on each other and we get the straggler in the conference finals if we can beat Vegas, which I really like our odds against Vegas this year.
Yeah, I think that's probably how all the Pacific teams feel.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, if we could just squeak by the first 2 rounds and then get a depleted Winnipeg, Dallas, or Avalanche, that feels pretty good to us. Right? Especially if you can get them at home.
And for us, Vegas typically just owned us third and fourth lines, and that's why we could never beat them. Where now, like with the fact that Stevenson's gone, because Stevenson was a killer of us. He beat us all the time. Like they lost, and then who's Marchessault over at Nashville? Like they lost some Edmonton killers. So I'm and some playoff killers. So I'm pretty of any year, I'm the least scared of Vegas this year. But that being said, I still have tremendous respect for the fact that they just seem to make something happen.
They just grind it out.
Well, and maybe this is my team I'm most disappointed in as far as the trade deadline goes, Vegas, because they didn't cheat.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I'm so used to Vegas cheating every trade deadline. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, and so that's the main reason why I'm like, I think we've got Vegas this year.
I can't cheat anymore.
Yeah, they didn't cheat this year, and so Stone will probably be injured by the time we get to him, because he won't have been injured the entire leading up to it, so he won't be fresh.
That is very true. Yeah, in the West, I think it's very interesting. I think there's a few teams that are looking at the playoffs either from the wild card or just like sneaking in, and nobody's taking them seriously.
Right.
I think the Avs are the only like quote unquote bottom feeder West team where people are scared of. Like,
Right.
who are people scared of the Wild? I don't think so. Like, are people scared of the Flames, who are probably going to sneak into that last wild card spot? No.
I pray that we could get the Flames.
That would be funny.
Yeah, I've watched plenty of Flames. I hate watch the Flames, and I would love to play them.
There are 6 teams in the Western Conference who have a plus goal differential on the season.
Right.
And it's the top 3 teams in each division.
Right.
And then the 5 teams in at the bottom half all have negative goal differentials.
Right.
And in the East, it's not much better. In the Metropolitan, the Columbus Blue Jackets have a plus goal differential, and then the rest don't. And then in the East, it's only the top 3 teams. It's kind of weird how, like, there is just such low bottom feeders this year, and there are just such, like, good teams this year.
Right.
And even the good teams aren't, like, phenomenal, but
right.
they're doing enough to be the good teams.
The Utah Hockey Club has a chance to make the playoffs, and I'm really hoping they do. It would be great. If you want, please give me a minute to do my Utah Hockey Club division and team name bit. Am I good to go on that?
Yeah.
So I think the team name for the Utah Hockey Club should be the Utah American Outlaws, and then they should make a division that's just the Canadian teams and the Utah Americans.
Yeah.
And then they just play the Canadian teams. And I just think that would be incredible. Because I think then can you imagine?
That would suck for travel.
It would suck for travel. It would suck. But it would be so funny because they've got the Montreal Canadiens. And even if we don't do the division thing, I still think the name, the Utah American Outlaws, is cooler.
I don't even think American Outlaws. I think it's just Americans. I just think Utah Americans is just funny.
It would be so funny.
Yeah. Can I give you my final decision on what I decided I want the Utah Hockey Club to be named? The Utah Soakers. All right, let's move on.
Classic.
Yeah. There's some good teams. There's some bad teams. I think the playoffs will be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see where every team kind of ends up. Because I think there are teams that people could be a little bit more worried about going into the playoffs. Like, I think if you have to play a team like the Devils, I don't think you're super happy about that just because they can be feisty. Right. You just got to deal with guys that you don't want to deal with.
Well, and the nothing to lose really strong teams who get a weird hot goaltending week.
Yes.
Like
that's like, I'm looking at the Blues and I'm like, the Blues aren't that side out of the picture too. Bennington coming off of what was a pretty decent performance in the Four Nations. So
keep that far away from me. No, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't want to see a really hot Jordan Bennington in the playoffs. That's the one thing I do not want to see. Right. There's a few teams that are like that. Vasilevsky.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay sitting in the 3
I've
seed.
A lot of Tampa. I really like Tampa. I really like them.
I think Tampa's good. I do think Toronto did get better. Obviously, you had a guy like Carlo Lofton. Is it Lofton or Lawton? I think it's Lofton. Lofton. Like, Toronto got better. Carlo's a huge player. Carlo was one of the best players in the Four Nations. So coming off of that momentum, carrying that into what is hoping to be the rest of the season.
Right.
I do think they got better. I still don't like them, and they're still going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, or first or second round. Like, what are the odds they get past the Panthers? 0?
Yeah, 0.
Is that generous?
I just that would be so surprising to me. It would almost be like a couple years ago when Florida beat Boston.
Yeah.
And you were stunned by that, and I was like, I remember going to that playoffs. You were so like, no, Boston. There's no way they lose to Florida.
I think I said they were one of the best teams of all time.
Yeah, it was one of your more confident picks ever, and I was like, I like this Florida team.
Yeah.
But that's how I feel about Toronto versus this Florida team. Is I'm just like, there is just so no shot.
Yeah,
because everybody on Florida is basically designed to frustrate exactly what Toronto wants to do.
That's true. Exactly.
It's like, you're not going to get stuff by Bobrovsky easy. And so you're not going to be able to get any momentum goals. And our whole team just wants to ruin your life.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Real quick, ending on hockey, I will say I do think the Avs had the best trade deadline. Not even just the trade deadline, but just trade period in general. Because people forget that we got rid of the worst goalkeeper in the league, Alex Georgiev, for a guy who's actually decent, and a backup goalkeeper who's actually decent. And now we have the double wood combo behind the goal.
Right.
And it's beautiful. And I love to see it. And then, obviously use Rantanen, but getting a guy like Nietzsche's back and then just filling out all the spots they need. Lindgren is a great defender, getting him in them in there. And then Nelson and Coyle, obviously just two great centers filling in the second and third lines. So just great depth, did everything they needed to do.
In the next 10 seconds, I'll update my Oilers pick about how I feel about them.
Did they lose?
Yeah. The Oilers suck. We just lost to Buffalo.
They do suck. Avs are still 0-0 with the Blackhawks. We're going to lose. If we don't score 8 goals a game, we're going to lose.
It's brutal. I can't watch my team play against bad teams. But no, I agree with you. I think the Avs came out they wheeled and dealed so many good things that you're just like, man, this was smart GMing.
Yeah.
Whether it totally pays off is one thing, but like that was a clinic of good GMing. If you're not going to pay Rantanen,
exactly.
Just a clinic. Really well done.
Exactly. I love it. That's enough hockey. We will see how hockey progresses. We'll do one probably in 2 weeks, and then maybe every week once the playoff starts, or maybe we'll just stick with every other week or after every round, whatever works best.
You just let me know.
We'll kind of balance it out, figure out what we want to do. But that's it for hockey. And now F1.
All right, let me signal the change. I'm going to turn the light
on. Signaling the change in podcast. Lights are on. There we go.
F1 time.
It's F1 time.
The light on.
Oh, shit, I got to get my Williams jacket.
Yeah.
That's on me. All right, F1. It's time to talk about it. What is there to talk about? It's race week. It's the first race of the season. First off, we're not going to be able to watch together. And this is Australia. And we love watching Australia.
Watching Australia.
Australia is one of my favorite races every year.
It's always fun.
So the fact that we're starting off with it, one, is super exciting. And yeah, I actually wish I was going to be here. I could have come over at like 2 a.m. I would have been sick. Yeah.
Right. Well, the crowd sizes in Australia are always epic.
God, they're massive.
And it's just, this is going to be a really fun start to the year. I mean, talk about just a fun way to begin the season. And like anybody who's a consistent listener to our F1 opinions knows that the most important thing that could possibly happen to both Nick and I is happening, and we get to see it happen in Australia week 1. Liam Lawson in a Red Bull. My gosh.
Yes. We manifested it. I talked all season about how great Liam Lawson was, and now he's driving with Max Verstappen.
I mean,
and it's fucking incredible.
I would have spent the whole time being like, hey, there's no way this happens because I'd be too happy with it.
Yeah.
Like, there was just no shot in my mind that this was a likely scenario at all. And yet, here we are.
It's so
What
cool.
happened to Checo?
Nothing. They just got rid of him. Here's the thing about Checo.
Then.
Yeah, he doesn't have a seat. Yeah, he doesn't have a seat. He's not driving. He might be a reserve. I actually don't know.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Honestly, you cash out because he did get that extra money.
Yeah.
Granted, no F1 driver needs more money, but
yeah, that's true. Come back next year for Cadillac.
Right.
Pretty simple, right? Yeah, exactly. Good for Checo. He goes out on kind of top.
Well, and Checo for me was always better than Ricciardo as far as watchability on Drive to Survive, which we haven't watched yet.
We'll watch,
But I'm very, very happy. I like Checo.
Yeah,
me too. Cannot wait to watch Liam Lawson in a Red Bull and see what happens. It's going to be absolute, I'm just ecstatic.
Well, let's do this. We talked about Liam Lawson. There's a lot of new seats this season. I think more than like we've seen in a very long time. I'm just going to go through them. You tell me which 3 stand out to you the most, not including Liam Lawson.
Okay. We're going to exclude Liam Lawson because that's
obviously number 1.
Obvious.
We would have that number 1.
All right.
And Lewis Hamilton's on Ferrari, but we would both have Liam Lawson number 1. Okay.
Right.
Anyways, Lewis Hamilton is in a Ferrari. That's number 1. Jack Doohan, Alpine.
No, thank you.
Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes. We'll talk about Kimi.
Antonelli's fun. I'm very much looking forward to that one.
Carlos Sainz, Williams.
Right.
Ollie Bierman in the Haas. Obviously, Lewis. Gabriel Bortoleto. We're going to learn about Bortoleto.
Right.
Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber this year. And am I missing one? Oh, Isaac Hajar. Okay. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. But that's the new drivers that we have this year.
Right.
Give me your rankings 1 to 3 on just who you're looking at and who you're looking forward to the most.
Lewis in the Ferrari has to be one here, just because it's like one, it's a dream come true for him. Really cool. But on top of that, like, and this is kind of my overall F1 viewpoint, so I don't want to give too much of that away, but just like, we don't know who's going to dominate a season. Like, this is so much parity in this. And so I definitely think Hamilton won, because it's like, all right, how in sync are him and Leclerc going to be? Is it going to be backfighting? Is it going to, like, are we going to be rainbows and sunshine, or are we going to be battling each other? Which, I mean, I think anyone who's not a Ferrari fan like me, I'm hoping for, I want, my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Our favorite driver, other than Liam Lawson, for
what?
I want the Lewis Hamilton and
George Russell?
Taylor Swift rumors. Why can't I remember his name?
Oh, Fernando Alonso.
That's the kind of battle I want between Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. I don't see it happening, but that's the kind of like beef that I want.
Here's what I think. I think there's going to be beef.
All right.
I don't think Leclerc, like, Lewis is going to come in and he's going to be the number one driver. Leclerc is a better driver at this point in his career.
Okay.
And so I think Leclerc is going to have a really hard time stepping back. And I think Ferrari's just going to give Lewis everything that he wants. I think it's going to be 50-50, and it should be like 60-40 for Leclerc.
Scenario, Carlos Sainz beats them both in points.
Yes. That is,
can you
that is dream scenario. Yeah. That would be incredible. Here's the thing about Ferrari and talking about Lewis in this situation. It's Lewis Hamilton. He's probably the greatest driver of all time. And so it's kind of like he gets to drive in his dream car for however many years that he wants, and then he's going to drive off into the sunset. I don't know how much Ferrari really cares about their success while Lewis is in the seat. I think it's just, we got Lewis Hamilton. Let's make something happen. So I don't know. I think if they were still going to compete for a title, which they were second last year, so it's like they are still competitive. They do still have a good car. They're Ferrari, obviously. They're going to be competitive. But like if they're going to compete, it's going to be this year. And then we'll have to see what those next coming years look like. Because I think there's a possibility that Leclerc
as a Ferrari hater, I'm going to tell you, I am really worried that Ferrari is going to do really well.
I think they're going to do good. I don't know. I have a hard time being like, I think Ferrari's winning the world championship. I have a hard time getting there. It seems like you're on the train of they could.
Happy, competitive Hamilton. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that him and Leclerc are actually going to be like, I think Piastri is probably going to be a more difficult teammate than Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. And that's a
great take.
That's what I'm kind of like paying attention to, is I'm really hoping that McLaren can be in lockstep and strategize well and handle everything well. And like, but I just think if there's going to be a team who has trouble with that out of Ferrari and McLaren, I think it's going to be McLaren who has trouble.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. What's your next driver seat that you're interested in?
I mean,
your new driver.
Antonelli. I'm really interested to see what Mercedes does, just because they have the luxury of not having super high expectations while they figure this out.
Yeah.
And those are always the teams that I like to see what happens. And this is kind of a like, hey, now that Lewis is gone, like we're either going to move backwards or forwards.
Yeah. And they were really good to end last year.
They ended well, and they had a lot of good moments. And like once they scrapped their old, we're going to do things super differently. Once they started competing on the same playing field, they did pretty well.
Exactly.
And I think Russell's a psycho.
Yeah.
In a good way. And so I'm really curious to watch, but I really want to watch Antonelli. I think there's a lot to like with Antonelli. So
he is very likable.
Yeah.
He I don't mean this as like a USA guy, but like he does need to learn a little bit better English.
Yeah.
Like to be an F1 driver, you have to be a little bit more marketable for the American audience, and his English is pretty bad. So he'll figure that out a little bit more. You know, we'll get him used to it.
He's at Mercedes. He's got a UK teammate, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
You start with the swear words, get him down really well. You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing, okay? Mercedes, this leads me to my first. I have 3 bold takes for this podcast. Here's my first bold take. George Russell is going to finish top 3 in points this year.
Okay.
Because you're the lead driver of Mercedes. You're in the prime of your career. You have a teammate who is young, who is adopting, who is basically meant to allow you to do your best. There is no reason that George Russell should not be one of the top 3 drivers this year. If Mercedes has a slightly relevant car, that's the only thing that could hold them back.
Right.
Is if it turns out that Mercedes is just tanking this season and they're like, Kimi's first year, we're going to figure it out. Like they're not actually going to do any upgrades to the car. If they just don't have a car that can compete,
Russell
they
was
won't
too
compete.
Good last year for them to do that.
Exactly. That's my issue.
He legit won a lot of races, and he had bad breaks and he had some good breaks, but
he had some terrible breaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he finished 6th last year. So making the jump up 3 spots, I don't think is super crazy. But if you were to tell me 3 years ago that George Russell would be in the top 3 contention, you probably would have said I was crazy.
Then let me ask you, okay, let's say Lando, Max,
George
Ferrari driver.
I think George Russell finishes ahead of both the Ferrari drivers. That's basically where my mind goes.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I'd be thrilled.
I think it's Lando and Max battling for the title. And then I think it's George Russell right there as the number 3 spot.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing. It sounds like you're higher on Red Bull and I'm higher on Ferrari because I'm very nervous about Red Bull's year. I just think Max spent last year being ticked off and being edgy and being like, I'm just going to drag this shit to the finals or to the championship. I don't think their culture has like all of a sudden 180'd and gotten really good.
Oh, definitely not. No.
And so
especially losing Newey.
No more Newey. Yeah. They've lost a lot of team members. I'm nervous.
We're going to get to Red Bull.
Okay.
But I think that it's hard for me to say that Max isn't still going to compete for the title with Lando.
Yeah.
And so like
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because absolute rage that Verstappen would exhibit on a public stage if it's the car letting him down.
Yes.
Would be like, and like I said, as a Ferrari hater, I would love to see Max still be that top 3 guy.
Yeah.
Ferrari makes me nervous.
Exactly.
I am really hoping to get a lot of Verstappen, Hamilton, dodgy battles, passing, frustration.
I think it'd be fun.
Those two, and that's a part of what I also think helps alleviate the Ferrari beef is that Lewis is going to be like, hey, I just need to beat Verstappen. I don't really care as much about Leclerc.
Yeah, that might be fair.
Yeah.
But if Leclerc's faster and better, Lewis isn't going to be fighting Verstappen for second. He's going to be trying to fight for first still. So
I don't know.
And this actually leads me into my other strong take, which is I think whatever second driver finishes the highest in the driver standings, that team will win the constructors.
Okay.
And I don't think this is like a crazy take, but I think this season comes down to those second drivers so heavily, right? If I'm saying that you've got Max and Lando battling for first, and I'm expecting Oscar to probably be a little pissed this season and might not be the best teammate, could expect a drop off from him. And if I'm saying George Russell's top 3, where's Kimi falling into that, right?
Right.
And that's why I actually am still high on Ferrari because it's very possible that they just finished 4 and 5.
Right.
And Max might win and Liam Lawson might finish 8. Or Lando wins and Piastri finishes 7.
Well, and I'm doing the same thing I did last year where although I wanted to watch Liam all last year, I'm just going to really keep those expectations nice and low.
Yeah.
Like, wildest dreams, I never thought he'd be in the Red Bull second car.
Exactly.
So now I'm like, I'm just going to have really low expectations for Red Bull so that he doesn't have all of the pressure. He could just, he can keep proving me wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And so this brings me around to the Kimi point, which is like, I'm really excited to watch Kimi.
Right.
And I think their car is going to be good enough, and I think they're going to be competitive, and it just depends on how competitive he can be to see where Mercedes is going to line up in all this.
Right.
Because I don't know if I want to do my last take right now, but like, I think there's a possibility that Mercedes could end up being fifth.
Right.
Right. I think George Russell could be third, but Mercedes ends up fifth because Kimi just isn't all that.
There's just so much to look forward to with this season. There's just so much potential to be like, this could be like a constant season of every position matters.
Exactly.
And that kind of leads me into my kind of big take. And the thing that I'm going to be watching for is which team can keep their young drivers away from Ocon. That's basically going to be my thing I'm paying attention to during every race, is being like, wait, Antonelli's in ninth? Oh my gosh, Ocon's
right behind him. Oh, we forgot to talk about Ocon going to Haas.
Well, that's just constantly lurking over everyone's shoulder anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
If Haas has another like good year and it's just Ocon just ruining other teams' experiences.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like if you're ranking like the young guys coming in, like I don't know if Liam Lawson is considered a young guy coming in, but like Ollie Bierman and Kimi are 1 and 2 in some order, probably 1A, 1B at this point. And it's like Ollie is Ocon's teammate.
Right. And I'm just looking forward to spending all year being like, oh my gosh, who is Ocon next to right now?
Yeah.
Please protect our sweet young princes.
Oh no, Hajar is about to get crashed into.
Watch every race.
Is Ocon going to cause like a just 20 or 18-year-old to just
to give up,
die? Jesus.
Oh my gosh, because it's just scary. It's just scary. I'm so nervous about Ocon and Haas. Like,
yeah, especially if Haas is like decently competitive this year, like they were last year.
Right.
Like Haas was good last year.
Yeah.
And so if there's a situation where Ocon's sitting in the 9th and 10th spot that Hülkenberg and Magnussen were in basically all of last year,
right,
we're going to be in for some wild finishes with people trying to get into points.
And that's the thing, is Ocon has a tendency to every year he randomly gets third, second.
Yeah.
And so this year, what's that going to look like? And what teams is he going to be robbing of opportunities, right? Like, I mean, and that's not even getting into Alpine, who I also think, like, I love Gasly. I love Gasly, and they had a good end of the year last year.
Oh, 100% they did. I mean, they climbed all the way out of the pits of despair for the first, like, 7 races of the year to end up finishing 6th.
No,
they were miserable.
Being like, they are garbage and nothing is going to happen. And then at the end of the year, I was like, great.
Yeah.
This sucks.
We'll see if Duhan's good.
I'm sure he probably will be, because I wouldn't be happy with that.
Yeah, that's fair. He feels like he could be good.
Yeah, he feels like my kind of, I hate that this guy's good.
Yeah, exactly. So is Ocon your third guy that you're watching for in a new car? Since I forgot to mention him in the first part of the conversation. I don't know
if he's my third guy. He's my every guy I'm watching for
I'm
Ocon.
watching if he's close to Ocon.
Like, legit, because there's nobody I want having to deal with that unless it's Lance Stroll. I would like Lance Stroll to be on Ocon duty.
I want Lance Stroll and Ocon to be side by side the entire race for every race this entire season.
He has one responsibility from the go. His job is to protect the youngins from Ocon.
If Lance Stroll did that, all due respect,
exactly.
I would actually like Lance Stroll.
It's the only way for him to resuscitate his public image.
Yeah.
Is to just be like, no, I have one job.
I love it. All right, then who's the third guy that you're looking for?
I really do think, and this isn't a guy in a new seat, so unless you'd like me to stick with that, because then
no, that's fine. Just go with it. Nico Hulkenberg. We want to talk about Kick Sauber. We know,
right? I'm curious to watch Gasly. I think Gasly is the one who's, and like I said, I'm not an Alpine guy, and so I think I'm going to be the most bothered by Gasly just keeps doing things that frustrates the teams that I want to do better. I think he's going to frustrate the Mercedes. I think he's going to frustrate the Red Bull. That's a part of why this season is so exciting, is because it's like the ones and twos for the top teams. Like the twos are now enough of a gap that like the ones for the mid-tier teams can compete with them.
Yeah.
And so I think points are going to look way more different this year. And I just think it's going to be a lot of chaos. And that's why I do like Ferrari, right? That's why I go in being like, I know Ferrari's going to do well.
Yeah. When you have two guys who are at that level, right?
Yeah, at really high levels.
Like if we're saying that Leclerc is the driver 2 on this team and he's driver 2 and Gasly's driver 1, like that's a big difference. But if you're talking about Piastri being a driver 2 compared to Gasly being a number 1, that's not that big of a difference, in my opinion.
Right.
I think people are probably higher on Piastri.
Well, and even then,
or
Carlos
Kimi, for example. Yeah.
Like watching Carlos Sainz, he's probably my third in a new car, right? Where I'm very curious to see what Carlos Sainz brings to a Williams team that's kind of like Colapinto had some good races last year. Albon had a couple, but they were so disappointing that it was like just being relatively decent was exciting.
Yeah.
So I really hope Williams can do well. I really do.
Are you ready for my final take?
Let it rip.
Williams finishes top 5.
Top 5? Judas.
And they're the team where I'm like, Mercedes, if George Russell finishes 3rd and Kimi finishes like 12th and Sainz finishes 7th and Albon finishes 8th, I don't know what those points look like.
Right.
But like, I think there's a world where both those guys sit in the top 10. I really do. And that's a world where they easily slip into a top 5 team. And then it's like, all right, how high can they go?
Right.
Like here's the thing. Sainz is the number 1 driver on this team. Sainz is a pretty damn good number 1 driver.
Right.
Like when you compare the number 1 drivers, especially in the bottom half of the teams, it's him and Gasly.
Right.
Maybe Fernando Alonso. Exactly. Yeah. Fernando Alonso, I'd probably take Sainz. I think the line is like George Russell. Like I think I'd rather have George Russell over Sainz.
Right.
So that's 4 teams. So you're saying that Sainz is the 5th best number 1 driver.
Right.
Where's Albon in the second drivers?
Right.
Top 5. Like at least top 5. So I'm getting 2 really good drivers in a car that improved throughout the season.
Right.
And I'm getting a team that is looking willing to try and win. Like you don't bring in a guy like Sainz if you're not trying to win. You just don't. Sainz is a good enough driver to where you can get points and you can try and win. So I don't know how much they actually compete in races, but I think they basically just consistently stay at that Haas spot that was last year where Haas was just always getting 9th and 10th.
Right.
And then it's a matter of like, all right, how many races can they get like significant points? How many races can Carlos Sainz finish 5th? Right. How many podiums can Sainz get?
Well, and so here's kind of my takeaway from basically all of your predictions and I really want to live in the world that you've painted.
Like, it's a great world.
Yours would make me really happy. My F1 realism is painting my predictions where I'm just like, I'm going to stomach this.
Yeah.
I would really like it. I would really like it if Williams was top 5. It'd be just fantastic.
Be awesome.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool. It would be the best. Yeah. If I could actually like wear my Williams jacket with pride.
Right.
That's what
Can you imagine? Having pride in that jacket?
Yeah, exactly. Shit, it might make me stream F1 Manager again.
Right. Well, and at that point, like, that would put Williams on a higher tier than the Cowboys for you as far as successful teams that you support.
100%. Right? Yeah. Like getting fifth in the constructors that's better than anything the Cowboys have done.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I realized? I don't know if I told you this, but like I have a hard time understanding that none of my teams are actively like the defending champions anymore.
Right.
Like it still feels like the Rangers and the Nuggets just won yesterday, and like the Avs was like 1 year ago, but it's been like 3 years since the Avs won and 2 for Rangers and Nuggets.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh wait, none of my teams are actually defending champions. It kind of sucks. Yeah.
Kind of blows. No, I would say I'm a Saints fan.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm an Oilers fan, and we're right there.
Yeah.
And then
we need Williams to get fifth.
I mean, as far as the NBA goes, I'm still technically a Trailblazers fan.
Yeah.
But I just kind of float with the NBA. I'm just kind of like, yeah. So
Shade and Sharp.
Did Man United end up beating Arsenal yesterday?
No, they drew 1-1.
Oh.
Yeah. And we're out of the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. But we're in the Europa League, so we got that going for us.
Yeah, good.
It's the only major trophy we've won in the past like 10 years is the Europa League like 5 years ago.
Well, is there anything else F1 that we need to
do predictions? I was going to say we need to do fantasy. However, fantasy does not open until tomorrow.
Oh.
Like the website does not like allow you to do anything. And I saw this on their Twitter page.
Are we doing
like F1 fantasy?
1v1 F1 fantasy?
Yeah, we'll probably just do 1v1.
I don't like that.
It's me versus you. We could do it like
both draft 3 teams
and just total points.
I can talk to my sister, see if she wants to be in it, because she did fantasy F1 last year. For zero reason.
Here's what I was thinking. I was thinking we do the F1 fantasy, but like we make it a rule where we can't have the same player, like the same drivers or constructors.
All right.
And so we make it basically like a draft where it's like, all right, I'm taking Lando, I'm taking Max, go back and forth, but like it still has to fit in with the salary cap.
Right.
That the site provides. So you kind of have to look for like the best value type
There
deal.
is a part of me that would like it if we had to stay with our picks the whole year.
I wouldn't be against that.
Just because I think one of the harder parts of us doing the podcast is whenever we like kind of fall into the like, oh, well, what do you want to do with your team? Where I think it's way funnier if it's like, yeah, I put all my chips in Lewis Hamilton winning.
Yeah.
And he totally let me down. It turned out you were totally right. He just phoned it in this season. Beef happened, like I think that would be really fun.
I'd be down with that.
Okay.
What if we do that where we set it up to where we each do our teams, and then the only change we can make is at the like summer break.
Okay.
Like we get to make changes at the summer break, and that's it.
Right.
And once again, it's like,
and even those should be limited. Like there's a part of me that's like, we should only be allowed to switch constructors. Like you have to ride with your drivers.
We could we can make swaps. We can make swaps. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
All right,
but we're gonna have to take
like the summer
F1
break.
fantasy.
You get to swap. I'm all right with that.
Yeah, and we'll take the fantasy picks offline. So we'll be back next week telling you guys about that. And I'll just probably have you download the app so we can just do it separately.
Yeah, that probably works
because it's easier to keep track of points that way. It was kind of hard throughout the season to like do it. I also don't remember who won or lost. I'll have to go look. We're not gonna do the punishment.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. Predictions, not for the season, just for the race. Australia, first Grand Prix. How do you feel? What do you think going into it? I think that nobody has any clue what's going to happen. Yeah. And so these predictions are a true crapshoot. And I think that's what's really exciting about this season. It's not just Max.
So here's my prediction, because I'm a dick. Yeah. Max like dominates the race. And Liam Lawson doesn't do great, but he does like good. And everything else is just such chaos, but it does like feel like it starts the way every other year starts.
Yeah.
And a part of why I'm predicting that is because I think if that happens, then the season will actually be chaotic. But if Australia starts with like objective chaos, I think the season will just become something that'll be really like static and predictable.
Yeah. I agree. Wait, so you're picking Max to win?
So I'm picking Max to win, yes.
Okay. I think it's going to be similar on the same lines of what you kind of talked about for the actual race itself. I do think we're getting a red flag in this race. Feels like Australia always gets a red flag.
Right.
There's going to be a stoppage in this race. And I'm going Leclerc. Week 1.
All right.
I just talked about Ferrari for basically the entire podcast. I think Leclerc starts off hot, and Leclerc's like, yeah, I'm the best driver here.
I think,
hey guys.
Both of our predictions for race 1 is like counter to our predictions for the season.
Yeah. Yeah, if we see the opposite of what we think the season's going to go like,
that's how I feel.
We know that's how we feel about the season. Yeah.
The F1 loves to be like, oh, you thought this? No. Enjoy.
Yeah. I also think both Williams drivers gets points, and we start off hot with Williams being like, hey guys, here we are. So those are my
thrilled.
Those are my
picks. I love the world you paint. I just love it.
It's a great world.
Yeah, it's a beautiful world.
It's a beautiful F1 world. All right. Looking forward to it this weekend. It'll be fun. And then right after that, the next week we have China. So
China.
Not this again.
Are there going to be tariffs associated with the race?
It's a good question. Next week we'll have China. So I'll have to do that podcast while I'm in Colorado. We'll figure out the time. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We will see you next week for F1 and probably the following week for more hockey and so on and so forth. Or maybe we just do hockey when there's an F1 race. That way we can just match it
just
together.
Us two. We might as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It'd just be probably easier that way.
Yeah.
So we'll just combine the two. We'll hit a very wide array of fan bases.
Right.
If just like once, a couple times a month, we're doing hockey for 30 minutes and F1 for 30 minutes.
A lot of my Canadian friends like F1 as well. And so
Big Lance Stroll
it's a pretty good Venn diagram, right?
That's true. Yeah. Do the Canadians actually like Lance Stroll?
Not from anything I've seen. Canadians as a whole are not as pro-billionaire as Americans.
Yeah.
And so just because he's their billionaire, they're still not like super thrilled. Now, Alberta, little different. Albertans can probably lean, but he's not an Albertan. So they're like, I'm indifferent.
Well, and they're not like, that's our Canadian on the track. Yeah. Woohoo.
I mean,
they're not like Logan Sargent
typically do that sort of thing. But when it comes to billionaires, no.
Yeah.
They're not that hyped about it. Like they love Ryan Reynolds.
Justin Bieber. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do love their Canadians. Yeah. That is true. All right. Yeah. Maybe we'll just do that moving forward. Hockey F1 combo pod.
F1 combo pod.
If you're a F1 hockey fan, this is the place for you. I'll tell you that much. We're appealing to a very, very select audience here.
I hope we get to go on Colin Cowherd together and talk hockey and F1.
Talk hockey F1. Maybe one of these podcasts we'll just do a what hockey player is this F1 driver?
Yeah. That'd be fun.
We might just have to do that.
That'd be fun.
It'd
be a little hard. It'd be a little difficult.
I feel like we could figure stuff out. Just do like a little bit of research. We might have to do that.
Granted, it's a little easier than like NBA hockey stuff because I was going to say this during the hockey trade deadline talk. It's like, which NBA guy is this? But it's like hockey superstars don't make the same impact because teams so much. There's more players and there's more line changes and stuff where it's like, I don't know what NBA player Mikko Rantanen is.
Yeah, it's
like,
hard to
is he
say.
Ja Morant?
He's Michael Porter Jr. That's a compliment to MPJ.
Yeah, that's a big compliment to MPJ.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd be down to do that. That'd be fun. Hockey players.
It's probably more Jamal Murray than MPJ.
Well, and we could go a whole F1 podcast where we just only refer to the F1 drivers with their hockey nicknames. Their name with at the end.
Yeah. Stroller. Stroller's pretty good.
Verstappener.
That just sounds inappropriate.
That's inappropriate. Yeah, we can't say that.
Brutal. Yeah, that'll be fun. Lost center. That's good. Yeah, we'll have fun doing that. F1 hockey. We'll be back next week for China talking about it. So
China.
Thank you, Cooper. I'll see you next week.
Very nice.
Very nice.